I'm going to be introducing our closing speaker tonight, Bill Nye. And I was looking into Bill and his background, and I thought, how would you give this guy a bio? And then you saw on your chairs, we've got a copy of his recent book, and it's the best bio ever, and I want it, but it's probably too late. Scientist, engineer, comedian, inventor. I think it's an apt summary. Further, I did not know this, but he studied under Carl Sagan at Cornell billions and billions of years ago. He was an engineer at Boeing on the team that developed the 747. And then, as most of us are probably familiar with him, he went on then to create, produce, and run a much beloved show where he became Bill Nye, the Science Guy. And one thing, indeed, and one thing I've noticed as soon as we learned that he'd agreed to speak, is you can't actually say his name without smiling. How do you say Bill Nye, the Science Guy? You smile. People smile when they say his name. Well, maybe not everyone, but I'm going to let him tell the story of people who maybe don't smile when they say his name or when they debate him on television. His personal passion in recent years has been taking on science denial in all its forms. He's going to be talking about some of that. He's going to talk about climate change, broader science issues. The book you have is on evolution. But what you might not be prepared for if you've just seen YouTube clips or seen him on John Oliver or the other places where he's appeared is a voice that comes through very strongly in the book. I picked it up and started flipping through it feeling like I owed a certain duty for good preparation for an intro. And it's the first time I've read a book on science cover to cover without putting it down. And what you find, and I really encourage you to dig into it, and also let your kids dig into it, because he also has this gift for taking things that are complicated, as very sophisticated ideas, but I'm absolutely certain that my 17-year-old will love this book. And what's striking about it, particularly given my intro to Bill, was on television with him paired up with people debating the other side of climate. He's very hard-hitting. He speaks with clarity, but also with compassion. There's a lot of compassion in his writing. And above all, even when he's talking about very serious, really complicated things, this sense of childish wonder, which you can't help but catch on to in reading his stuff. So I hope you enjoy this. I think you will. And I hope Bill is actually ready to come up here, bursting through the curtain at some time soon. There he is, running forward.
Thank you, thank you.
Thanks so much, Bill.
Thank you. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, kids of all ages, it's so good to see you. I was really excited about this until just a couple minutes ago. No, somebody came up to me and said, "Is Bill Nye your real name?" And I said, "Well, it's William Nye." And he said, "Well, why did you change it?" Wow, okay. No, greetings, everyone. For those of you unfamiliar with this picture, we can do this in exciting real time? Yes, okay. There. That's you. And then back there is also you. If those of you unfamiliar with this picture, this is Earthrise, taken by an astronaut, Bill Anders, in 1968. And, oh, shoot, we went past it, huh? Okay. Bill Anders in 1968, and it was a striking picture. And this is the first time, really, that humankind saw the Earth in this way. And to somebody like my grandfather, it didn't look real. Not only because the moon is supposed to be in the foreground, which it is, but also because there'd be too many clouds people of my grandfather's generation would have expected the Earth to look like a classroom globe. I mean, can you blame him? But everybody, what were we talking about earlier, 25-year-olds? Everybody, even my age, expects the Earth to be covered with clouds. And I often wonder what else we take for granted that is absolutely wrong. When I was 9 years old, I went to the World's Fair right here in New York, New York. The town's so nice they named it twice. And my father, who is the guy taking pictures of the car odometer as it changes from 99,999 miles to 100,000 miles, taking pictures, and the cop pulls us over. Sir, what are you doing? I'm taking pictures of the, oh, really? Okay, great. Okay, but we missed this total board. The United Nations had a total board, a tote board, showing the population of the Earth, the human population, which included, apparently, my old boss. It's kind of surprising. If you met him, you weren't sure if he'd really qualified. But we missed it changing from 2,999,999 to 3 billion. Now, for those of you keeping score, this morning, or about midday, about lunchtime, population is over 7.2 billion. So this is the problem, everybody. There's 7.2 billion people living on a world that in my grandfather's time barely had 1.5 billion. I presume we all know this, but I spend a lot of time talking to people who don't accept climate change and don't want to do anything about it. But we have 7.2 billion people, and then if you look at the Earth from space, it almost looks like it's out of focus. This is a picture taken from the International Space Station. It's not out of focus. That's the atmosphere. That's the whole thing. If we had some extraordinary car and we could drive it on some extraordinary road and go straight up for an hour, well, if you're trying to get from downtown to like the Upper West Side, it'd be like a day and a half. You'd be in outer space in just an hour of freeway driving. So that's the problem. And then as a guy brought up in the United States, I'm an engineer. I mean, I'm a human. I'm an engineer from the U.S. I just am naturally loyal to the United States. And I just remind everybody that in the U.S. Constitution, probably a result of the influence of both Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson, the U.S. Constitution says, Article 1, Section 8, Congress shall promote the progress of science and the useful arts. And I think useful arts was a 19th century or 18th century expression for engineering, using science to solve problems and make things. And so for me, when people deny science aggressively and on purposely, it's a little bit crazy making, because for me, they are violating the U.S. Constitution. And that's a big deal. I know we argue about the Constitution all the time, but that is a serious matter. So as you may know, I spent some time last February, 2.5 hours on stage with a guy who diligently does not believe in the age of the Earth, doesn't believe in geology, doesn't believe in sort of anything that we know, but rest assured, they have a very serious social media outlet. They hire all sorts of developers and a big Facebook page, big Twitter business. And I just want to remind you all why it's important. The same organization has these science lessons. They have this whole curriculum. They must spend a tremendous fraction of their income, which is in the millions of dollars, on indoctrinating kids. And this is where I draw the line. You can believe whatever you want to believe, but the Earth is not 6,000 years old, and we do not want to lose a generation of science students to this pseudo-scientific worldview that's clearly wrong. Well, thank you. But we're all, thank you. But everybody, we're all in the big city on the East Coast, and we're all so hip and so on. But there's places in the United States, which is nominally the world leader in innovation. I mean, we can make arguments about that, but it's certainly among the world leaders in innovations. There's places in the US where people deny science full time. And this wouldn't matter if the situation weren't so serious. And the whole thing for me was crystallized by a card that was submitted to us, a question from the audience, and it said, what, if anything, would change your mind? And for those of you who watched it, it'll just take a minute. For those of you who didn't, I went on about, well, if we found fossils that were frozen between geologic layers in the Grand Canyon during your Great Flood, if we had some way to get boulders in Oregon on top of the ground instead of at the bottom, which they would have if they sank to the bottom during your Great Flood, if we found a way for stars, which are millions of light years away, to somehow only appear to be 6,000, if the speed of light were not the speed of light, if there was no background microwave radiation indicating the Big Bang, well, then we could take a meeting. Okay. My opponent said nothing. Nothing would change his mind. Absolutely nothing. So just imagine if these people were on a jury and you were accused of something, or maybe more importantly, you're trying to win a lawsuit. Evidence doesn't matter. No, I'm cool. I've made up my mind. I mean, just imagine if we raise a generation of kids who have no critical thinking skills, who have no, and my parents pointed out, I mean, don't get me wrong, and you in corporate world must know this, common sense, not that common. But just think if we raise a generation of kids with this worldview. Bear in mind, I took a lot of criticism. This was the next day. Bill Nye, the Science Law, yes, it's all my fault. Yes, I'm the guy. No, but just notice the thing, first of all, it's raining. So this family, whoever did this, took it seriously. That's like paint. I mean, that's water-resistant material there. And it's a family vehicle. I mean, this person, the operator of this vehicle, the owner of this vehicle, has kids. And he or she is working really hard to make sure they don't think scientifically. That would be okay, except the problems facing the world are so serious. We cannot exclude a generation of science students. I mean, at one level, seriously, everybody, it is laughable. I mean, it's so out of your everyday experience. That looks blue to me. No, it's red. No, really, it's blue. And so if the problems weren't so serious, it wouldn't matter, but they are. So along with all this guy, along with his 6,000-year-old Earth worldview, as you may know, insists and leads his flock in the belief that the Earth is cooling, even though there is absolutely, as you know, no evidence of that. And last Sunday, turned it up another notch. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change was even more strident than they've been in the past. Now here in the United States and in Britain, we have no shortage of climate deniers. And these people have succeeded, or their people coaching them, have succeeded in introducing the idea that doubt, scientific uncertainty, plus or minus such and such percent with regard to the effects of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, is the same as doubt about the whole thing. And as you may know, in some cases they've hired the very same guys who introduced doubt about the connection between cigarettes and cancer. So this matter is very serious to me, and so I wrote a book. And I hope you all take it home and read it. It was by my introducer, very well reviewed. He read it cover to cover. I love you, man. And I put my heart and soul into it. So after this debate, my publisher, St. Martin's Press, they're in the Flatiron building over there, the triangle thing. And they said, well, you got to stop what you're doing and do this. So I did. And I'm very proud of it. And take a look. It has a lot of personal stories. I spoke with, well, really two, Ivan the gorilla. He was a gorilla that I talked with. I've spoken with dogs about this. And those stories are all in there. But we are all in this together. Every one of us here on Earth is part of the same tree of life. And I've taken a risk. If there are any biologists out there. Oh, by the way, so I made some sketches I mean, St. Martin's Press, they're like a real thing. They're like a real deal. This is not, Uncle Bill self-publishing. It's like a real publisher. And so I made some sketches and I sent them over there. They just put them in the book. It's like, they didn't hire they didn't even take, PowerPoint and make like little fonts. So, just so you know, I took a risk. I'm trained as a mechanical engineer, but I did take some life science. I took a lot of physics, everybody. And I just want everybody to keep in mind that this Ebola problem is a result of evolution. And one of the risks I took as the author of the book is I declared the vira, the viruses, to be their own domain of life. For those of you who might be over 25, the kingdom, order, phylum, class, all that stuff, that's still going. Order, family, genus, species, that's all still going, but now they're domains above that. And virus is second declension, Latin, anybody? So I pluralized it with an A. Wow, Bill, cool. No. So I just remind us all that the vira, are a result of having living things. It certainly seems to me. So that is among the other things that I hope people think about when they read my book. But the main thing is that we need to change the world. And having people that are denying science is not in anybody's best interest. This is me. It's a picture of me. I'm over here. On the roof of my house in Los Angeles. And in the background, I have 4 kilowatts of solar panels. In the foreground, I have a Solatube dome. It's a brand name. There's several competitors now. And if you're not familiar with it, it has a Fresnel lens, not unlike one of these, 2 of these 6 lights here. And it directs light down this super shiny tube. It's so shiny. How shiny is it? On the box, it says, don't leave it in the sun. You'll start a fire. And so it directs light down the tube. It's much more efficient than just a traditional architectural skylight. And then in the foreground is my solar hot water system. Everybody, I don't know who's from where, but the heat is free. Okay, it's just plumbing. It's a box with tubes in it, with a pipe in it. This is not rocket surgery, okay? It's just somebody's got to go in the solar hot water business. You could make huge coin. And my point being that these technologies exist. I live in Los Angeles. If you ever saw the movie Chinatown, that's still going on. The Department of Water and Power is more powerful than anybody in Los Angeles. And it's just fun, you guys. It's just fun. Every 60 days, my electric bill is $10. That's just fun. You can hate science, you can hate me, but it's just fun. $10. And so my point is, this stuff exists. My watch is a Citizen brand. I'm not a shareholder. I guess maybe I should be. It's solar powered. I haven't wound it in 8 years. These solar panels are about 10% efficient. The ones in this picture are about 15% efficient. The ones on spacecraft are about 30% efficient. But I cannot help but wonder, what would life be like if they were 60%, twice as efficient, 80% efficient? It would change the world. And if some 25-year-old chemical engineer here, material scientist, could invent this, you're going to get rich. You're going to be like Bill Gates rich, like head of IKEA guy rich. And so I want people in the world to embrace this, and I believe that through technology we can change the world for the better. And you guys have probably been down this road, but I'll just remind us that in the United States, there's 5 times as much energy and wind in North Dakota as North America uses, if we just had a way to get it from North Dakota to where North America needs it. In the Four Corners region, in the western United States, Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, Wyoming, you got 3 times as much energy as we need in just 100 square kilometers. If you could get that all over North America, you would change the world. I'm now living in New York, and I don't have a car, check me out. But for 3 years, I drove a Nissan Leaf. It's an electric vehicle. It's charming. It's fabulous. After you have an electric car, you guys, you will not go back. It's just a superior experience. We know how many toilets flush at halftime of Super Bowl, for example. Does anybody watch the Giants games? But it's the same idea. And then, I'm sorry, Giants are a football team. Yeah, sorry. It's okay. Don't worry about it. Anyway, we can store energy in everybody's car and then ship it around when we need it, because we know where all the cars are parked in the morning, where they're parked in midday, where they're parked at night, and we could move electricity around. This wouldn't solve the whole problem, but it could be a huge fraction. I'm excited about the liquid metal batteries that are molten metal. Now, in general, you do not want molten metal in your car, generally. The sloshing around, the scalding, the instant death, that's bad. But under your house, under giant skyscrapers, under college campuses, under factories, we could have these batteries that are hot on purpose. You know, the big problem with traditional batteries, they lose their capacity when they get warm. This is a battery. The proposal is that it's a layer of molten magnesium, the same thing you make mag wheels out of, or fancy bike components, and then a layer of table salt. There's not enough here, but same idea. And then a layer of antimony, or antimony in British talk. That's the one next to tin on the periodic table. And these batteries would hold tremendous amounts of energy. And we'd pump it in there when the wind's blowing and the sun's shining, and we'd use it all night. We'd party on. So in order to get this done, we need a smart electrical grid that would move energy around virtually automatically in the same way your cell phone call is handed from one to another. And if we could do this, then run it through nanotube power lines. These would be carbon nanotubes. I interviewed Rick Smalley, one of the guys who discovered Buckminster fullerenes, the buckyballs. And he said it's like the electron falls asleep at one end of the transmission line, has a dream, and wakes up at the other end with no electrical resistance. Furthermore, when they get warm, they tighten up and the resistance goes down. Doot, 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 doot. That's the opposite of traditional power lines. Any of these innovations would utterly change the world. If we could do them all at once, we could save the world. Now, you know, many people have themes. We got to save the Earth. I guess you all know the Earth's going to be here no matter what we do. I want to save the Earth for me, for the human. That's what I'm into. Now, I have the solution for you, a possible solution. I am so old. How old are you? I'm so old. I was a little kid when Alaska was admitted as a state. And my father was very proud of the odometer guy, also had a 49-star flag. 49 is not a prime number, everybody. There's 7 sevens. And in the state of Alaska, as you may know, there isn't really one. It's a state. It's enormous. It's 3 times the size of the state of Texas. But there's different regions. Nevertheless, the Alaskans got together, as you may know, and they have the Alaska Permanent Fund. And this was established back in the disco era. Back in 1976, you could be kung fu fighting, or working at the car wash, or you might just be doing the hustle back then, 1976. But in this agreement, in the state of Alaska, which, as you may know, in many ways is not politically aligned with New York, they established this fund. And in Alaska, the fund has been going since 1976. They have taken money. In 1977, the fund was worth less than $1 million, and now it's over $42 million. And this year, every Alaskan receives $1,884 per person. And this is a result of their oil fields, their oil and gas fields on the North Slope. You've probably heard that expression, the North Slope in Alaska. So here's what we could do. We could have the same model, not with related to gas and oil literally, but instead related to carbon production, to carbon dioxide. Now, many of you have probably been down this road, but I just want to spell it out, just one quick slide. If we take a US system like the Department of Treasury and something like the Internal Revenue Service, Alaska has their fund, they have an administration just for that fund. We would have a carbon fee fund, a carbon fee and dividend, so that the more carbon you produce, the more you have to put into this fund. And then every year that fund is redistributed to everybody. I know this is top down, but the effect of this could be astonishing. So rich people like me, let's say, make a lot more carbon than people who are middle class and go to work every day and drive their family van in Kentucky or the county south of there in Tennessee. Those people would get money back every year. Corporations would have to put money into this fund if they produce a lot of carbon. Oil and gas industry, as you may know, has already planned for this. They're already planning for this fee. The country of China is already planning for this fee. So typically, what we would do is the cost of fossil fuels would go up. It would be about 10 cents a gallon. For those of you from other countries, gallon is this primitive unit associated with 4 liters. I'm sorry. And I'm just interested, how funny is, wherever there are 4 sustainable resource corporate executives, there's a 5th. No? Okay. No, booze used to be sold by the 1/5 of a gallon. No. You know, the joke's not as funny. Wherever there are 4 executives, there's 750 milliliters. It's not. So fossil fuels would cost more for everybody. Would cost more for the average person. It would cost more. But the average person would receive back, in the first estimation, about $3,000 a year. About 1.5 what the Alaskans get right now. So the middle class would get more money. But the main thing, if this carbon fee were imposed, and we all agreed to do it, innovation would happen like that. People, engineers, scientists around the world, entrepreneurs would just jump on this. If there's a way to do more with less, people would jump on it. And it would change the world. And furthermore, I claim, now bear in mind, I'm from the United States. I do my best to be objective, but I'm a patriot, or I want to act patriotically. My claim is, if the United States were to lead the world, climate change would get addressed like that. There wouldn't have this problem of everybody whining that's the word. Well, India is doing this, and so we can't, and China is doing that, and so it's not fair. The heck with that. If the United States were out in front, everybody would get on board. Furthermore, the United States, well, easy for me to say, but I'm not kidding. And then we could also have it set up so that we'd have a tariff. If we're importing goods from another country, that those goods are produced with a high carbon output, we'd have a tariff on that. And then those countries, everybody would be motivated to lower it. The problem with this is, if you don't believe that climate change is happening and you can influence politics, this won't get off the ground. But I strongly believe that we're at a tipping point, that the world is fed up. And the governor of Alaska, Bill Walker, elected Tuesday night, says Alaska is ground zero of climate change. And do you know which political party Bill Walker's on? Neither one. He's an independent. So it seems like there's a way forward. Doesn't it seem like a big change that we could make? Now, as far as anybody knows, I was in 2nd grade when Mrs. McGonagall read to us from a big book. And she said, the ancient dinosaurs died out because they had small brains. And all the mammals took their food and they died. And then, And even she knew that was just lame. I mean, that's just not reasonable. There's a rabbit, and I'm a Tyrannosaurus. Oh, yeah. Oh, Jesus. Sorry. I mean, it just doesn't seem possible. And so when I was a kid, there was no reasonable explanation for what happened to the ancient dinosaurs. Since then, people have discovered the Deccan traps, the Deccan stair steps in India, where there's all this volcanism, all these volcanoes produce all this sulfur dioxide in the atmosphere, and then the Earth got hit with this big impactor off what is now Chicxulub, Mexico, and the dust went halfway to the moon. The cone of the ejecta, the stuff ejected, was bigger than the diameter of the Earth, and the Earth was on fire. And so if you're a big animal, that sucks, it's very troubling. There is no evidence that the ancient dinosaurs had a space program. But if they had, they wouldn't have let this happen. Now, you may remember Chelyabinsk, Russia, a year ago. There was a bolide, which is a fabulous crossword puzzle word. It's a meteor in the daytime. Everybody went up to the windows in Chelyabinsk to watch this thing go through the sky, and then almost 3 minutes later, the sonic boom comes down, blows the windows in everybody's face. 1,000 people go to the hospital. We live in a cosmic shooting gallery. I know we are thinking about medium term, long term. I'm telling you, if the Earth got hit with an asteroid, that would really suck. So I just want you to know, you may not know this about me, but I have a day job now. Very troubling. I took astronomy from Carl Sagan. He started the Planetary Society in 1980. Through paper mail, direct mail, I joined. I've been a member since 1980. 1997, I was asked to be on the board. After he died, I was asked to be on the board of directors. Then I became vice president. Then 4 years ago, I left the room, or I don't know what, and now I'm the CEO. And Neil deGrasse Tyson's on our board. I don't know if you know him. Heidi Hamill, Scott Hubble. Neil and I we spend a lot of time. But the Planetary Society thinks deeply about asteroids. I'm not kidding you. Now, an asteroid has to be deflected. If an asteroid's going 20 kilometers a second, we have to move it. We have to just about 2 millimeters a second. By the way, rocket people, they love the change in velocity, delta V. They can't get enough of delta V. So we have to change it about 10 millionth of its momentum. And you don't want, let me just tell you, you don't want to send Bruce Willis. It's probably not going to work out. You probably don't want to blow it up because you might make it worse. You might make another rock, a piece of it, hit you later on in the Earth's orbit. It's a four-dimensional problem. It's X, Y, Z, and it's time. You want the rock to miss the Earth when we're going through the orbit. So the Planetary Society has been messing around with this at a university in Scotland where you zap rocks with lasers. And the dust that's burned off, that's ablated, that's ejected, has momentum, and it works a little better than people thought. So what we want to do at the Planetary Society is make a system of spacecraft we call the laser bees. And these would be out in space, and they'd soak up sunlight, and then they zap the surface of the asteroid. Except it's in outer space, there's no sound, it'd just be like that. And then the ejected material will have enough momentum. And the thing is, when you send a traditional rocket, you probably have seen this. A rocket goes for 8 or 9 minutes and the fuel's gone. You're done. But with the laser bees, we can zap the rock for days or weeks or months or years. And you'd have a system very much like a cell phone network. When one of them was working really well, you'd use that one more. One of them wasn't working especially well, you kind of turn that one off. And remember, the asteroid's going to be tumbling in 3 axes probably, and you could deal with that with these spacecraft. So this, for me, is very much the legacy of Carl Sagan. This is very much, he talked about asteroid impacts quite a bit back in the disco era. The other thing we're working on at the Planetary Society is lowering the cost of space exploration. And we are building a solar sail spacecraft. And it will launch right now, 15th of May. Space rocket flights are hard to control, but the 15th of May is the nominal launch date. And this will be pushed through space by sunlight. Whoa, yeah, I know. light, although it has no mass, photons have no mass, they have momentum. And so our proposal is we're going to have two flights. First one's more of a test flight. The second one will really be sailing. And we'll see how well it works. And this could be the future of spaceflight. And I mention this because a space program changes everything. I look around the room, I can see many, many of you are a product of the space program. And you probably, some of you here have dropped the phrase, well, if they can put a man on the moon, why can't they blank? Make a better soft drink? Or why does this computer have to be rebooted? What? And so on. That's kind of a long story. There's a lot of codes. But the space exploration brings out the best in us. Space exploration is where we solve problems that have never been solved before. And I mention this because if you talk to people on the street and you say, what's the NASA budget? People's perception is it's about a tenth, 10% of the US federal budget. It's about 0.4%. Furthermore, about 3/4 of what happens at NASA supports human spaceflight. I applied to be an astronaut 4 times, okay? They didn't take me. How many PhDs do you have? 100 to 300. No, the people who become astronauts are amazing. But where the new stuff happens is in planetary science. That's where the new adventures are taking place in space. And this is, people perceive that the space program ended with the last flight of the space shuttle. But that, we like to say, is not true at all. The turning point came, for those of you scoring along with us, I just like to share this. A guy on our board, John Logsdon, I consider the world's foremost authority in the history of space. His next book is about this phenomenon. There's Richard Nixon sitting in his office, 1970, and there on the wall is Earthrise, the same picture we started with. After he got the votes in California to build the space shuttle, 6 months later, he changed the picture. It's no longer Earthrise, it's this beautiful landscape and so on. Because he did it really, and I understand it, for political reasons. It was that year that NASA, which is the best brand the United States has, it was that year when NASA changed from being an exploration agency to a jobs program. But we hope to turn that around. We hope to change the world. So everybody in this room, while we are working on sustainability, while we are working to make the world better for so many of us, for so many of the 7.2, soon to be 8, 9, 10 billion people, I want us to keep in mind to keep looking out farther and deeper into space. Along with his other extraordinary claims, Ken Ham says NASA is wasting a lot of money looking for alien life because it's really about evolution. If there weren't evolution, NASA wouldn't be needing to do this. And there is an evolution. Take it from me. I run this weird place. And so, everybody, last November, just about exactly a year ago, this is a picture of Europa, the moon of Jupiter, that Galileo found with his military instrument, the telescope. And he saw it going around. I hope those of you who have not seen Jupiter through a telescope and seen the 4 pinpricks of light, the Galilean moons, I encourage you to do that. This moon has twice as much seawater as the Earth. And it's covered with a shell of ice because it faces the blackness of space, which is barely 3 Kelvin, 3 degrees above absolute zero. And so under that ice is liquid water because as Europa goes around Jupiter, it's squeezed like a rubber ball in your hand when you're stressed like that. And it squeezes it. It goes around Jupiter every 25 Earth hours. And that keeps the ocean liquid. Last November, we found geysers similar to these. Geysers are on Enceladus, a moon of Saturn. But if these geysers exist on Europa, and they seem to, it transforms a space mission which could utterly change the world. Okay, these geysers are squirted into space because Europa is squeezed by gravity. There's been liquid water there for 4.5 billion years. I cannot help but wonder, are there some Europanian fish people swimming around? And do they have grim jokes? Yeah, I sure hope I don't swim near one of those geysers and get sucked into space. So instead of everybody having to land a spacecraft on Europa, which is an extraordinarily expensive mission, National Geographic carried an article about this, a series of articles about last July, just a few months ago. Instead of having to land a spacecraft and make a drill powered by a nuclear reactor to get through the ice, all we'd have to do is fly through these geysers and, if you will, count flies on the windshield. If we were able to prove that there's life on another world, it would utterly change this world. So while we are working on these problems, these sustainability problems here on Earth, I want us to not lose sight of this big, extraordinary picture. One of the the most astonishing things to me about science and about what's in this time that I've been alive, we discovered that everything in this room, including you and me, and apparently even my old boss, is made of the same stuff from exploding stars. We are the product of exploding stars. We are stardust. So you and I are at least one way that the universe knows itself. And at this point, if you're of my age, you can hear doot, 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 doot. You can hear the Twilight Zone theme song. You mean I'm part of a star? Yeah, dude, yeah. So on one of the extraordinary things that happened to me, I got invited to a meeting at Cornell University, and we had this test pattern for the cameras, which, because of my father's internment in prison camp, I suggested become a sundial. And so on the Curiosity rover, the Spirit rover, and the Opportunity rover, there are these little Mars dials, we call them. And they are used for getting the colors right in the pictures on Mars. But around the edge, if you go to the Smithsonian, the flight spare, as we called it, which was in Dr. Jim Bell's desk, he said, you can have it, yeah. If you go to the Smithsonian, it's in the Mars Gallery, it carries with it the first message to the future since the Voyager missions in the 1970s. If you look at the edge in very, very small letters around the four sides of the Mars dial, it says, we built the spacecraft in now year 2010, it arrived here in 2012. We built these instruments to study the Martian environment, to look for signs of water and life, to learn about Mars' past and prepare for our future. And then it says, in very small letters, to those who visit here, we wish a safe journey and the joy of discovery. And that, my friends, is the essence of science. That is why we are in this business, this technology business. That is why we do what we do every day, to make discoveries so that we can change the world and leave it better for the generations that come behind us. This picture was submitted last November on the 18th, along with Carl Sagan's papers, to the Library of Congress. This was taken by the Cassini spacecraft last year, and it's from what humans would call the South Pole of Saturn, looking up through the Saturnian rings into the blackness of space. The rings are lit by light from the sun, but it's also a picture of the Earth. The Earth is right there. That's everybody you've ever met. That's every BSR conference that's ever happened. Every virus, every sea jelly, every oak tree, the whole, even my old boss apparently, is from there. If we go up this way, 100,000 kilometers, which in space travel is nothing, that's a day at the office, there's the same view, and there's the Earth right there. When I was a kid, I grew up in the city of Washington, D.C., go Nationals. When I was a kid, we go to Delaware, to the beach. Delaware's a state. Yeah, sorry. We go to the beach, and it's a small one, but it's there. And Mrs. Cochran, my third grade teacher, told us there are more stars in the sky than grains of sand on the beach. And I thought, that is really an extraordinary claim, Mrs. Cochran. I wouldn't have said it this way at that time. Mrs. Cochran, are you high? Have you ever been to a beach, lady? There is nothing but sand. And the tide goes out, and there's more sand. Look behind you, there's sand. Let me tell you, people, it turns out there are about 100 times more stars in the observable universe than grains of sand on Earth. So when I was a kid, without that understanding, I started to feel pretty insignificant. I started to feel pretty much like a grain of sand. So I remember thinking, is there somebody out there looking at the Earth from his planet and thinking the same thing about himself? I mean, I'm really no different from the grains of sand. I'm just another speck with these little specks that are part of another speck which orbits the sun, completely unremarkable star. Nothing special about the sun. I'm a speck, standing on specks, part of a speck, orbiting a speck, with a bunch of other specks in the middle of specklessness. I am nothing. I suck. But with my brain, which is just this big, my old boss, of course, but with your brain, you can understand all this. With your brain, we can have this cosmic perspective. We can see the future. With our brains, we can, dare I say it, change the world. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. I love you, man. Oh, cool. Oh, wow. Gee whiz. All right, all right, all right. You've been doing this all night. Hang on a second. Hang on. Wow. Thanks, BSR. Very cool. Thank you. Wow. Thanks, you all.
You're joining us for dinner.
Yes, yes.
Staying for dinner. Right.
Thank you. Yes, yes, yes. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Bill, thank you so much. What a great way to wrap up a couple great days. I'm just going to quickly say thank you. Thanks to all of you, primarily in the audience. If it wasn't for the great work you do every day and the fact that you entrust at least a little bit of it with us, this show wouldn't happen. It's the work we all do together all year that makes up a big part of what we do here, and we're grateful for that. As a member of the management team at BSR, I also want to call out our mighty but mighty small conference team, which has done a lot of work to put this together, and they hate it every time I do this. Pamela Schwartz, Hetal Shah, and our partners, Carol, you don't get away with it either, Carol Gardner and our team at Meet Green. And also, you know, as one of the leaders at BSR, thanks to the rest of our staff. I think half or 2/3 of us are here. Conference team puts together a mighty effort, and a lot of other people on this team support it. We create the content and the events that go into it. So from Aaron, myself, and others on the team, thank you so much. Thank you to our premier sponsor, PepsiCo, and other sponsors. It helps us out a lot. It allows us to put this event on. And I'm going to make just two quick requests, and then I'm going to shut up forever, or at least until next year. And that is, we have a survey. You all should have the app by now. We have hounded you relentlessly for days. In the surveys section is your chance to tell us what you think of this event. We pore over this information scrupulously. It is the subject of speculation, competition, recrimination. And every year, and those of you who've been with us for a while know, we actually do make changes. We try and keep some things the same. We change format. We want to know what works, what doesn't. What do you think of everyone who's here? We can actually have some influence about who shows up. Everything is in play, and we really take it seriously. So please take a few minutes and do that. And then finally, commit right now that you're going to see us the next time we do this, which is going to be November 3rd to 5th in San Francisco, which is a nice place, 1 year from now. So thank you, bon appetit. We have a great dinner coming and hope to see you again soon.